People talk about heartbreak like it's one big, loud event. They talk about the final conversation, the tears, the moment someone walks out the door, the changing of the relationship status. Everyone treats it like a movie scene, like it's this massive explosion in your life, and after the dust settles, you just have to sweep it up and figure out how to move on. But they don't tell you about the second loss, the quiet one, the one that doesn't happen all at once, but sneaks up on you a week later when you're just sitting in your parked car outside a grocery store, staring at the steering wheel. When a relationship ends, you go into survival mode, you process the big things first. Okay, we aren't dating anymore. Okay, I'm not going to see her this weekend. Okay, I have to tell my family we broke up. You brace yourself for the loss of the romance because that's what a breakup is supposed to be. You know how to grieve a partner. There are songs about it. There are movies about it. Society gives you a blueprint for how to be sad about losing a girlfriend. But the relationship, that was just a title. The friendship, that was what actually filled the hours of your day. And that's the loss that completely empties your routine. Because you didn't just lose someone you were in love with. You lost the person you actually liked talking to. You lost your best friend. And you don't realize how much of your life was tied up in that friendship until you try to live a normal, boring Tuesday without it. It happens in the smallest, most stupid ways. You're going through your afternoon, you stop to get coffee, the cashier hands you the wrong order, you get back in your car, put the cup in the cup holder, and you hear that one specific song playing from a car next to you at a red light. Or you see a billboard that reminds you of a joke you made 2 months ago. You see a meme on your feed that makes absolutely zero sense to anyone else on the planet but the two of you. Your hand instinctively reaches for your phone. You unlock it, you open the messages. Your brain has already formed the sentence. You already know exactly what her reaction is going to be. You can practically hear the audio message she would send back. You can hear her laugh, and then it hits you. There's a boundary there now, an invisible wall that wasn't there last week. You can't hit send. You just sit there staring at the screen, your thumb hovering over the keyboard. Nothing. What are you supposed to do with that thought now? It's too small to post online. It's too specific to text to a regular friend because they wouldn't get the context. They wouldn't know why it was funny. They wouldn't know the backstory. So you just lock your phone, you put it back in your pocket, and you swallow the thought. That's what losing your best friend actually feels like. It's a constant daily swallowing of words. It's an accumulation of unshared moments that just pile up inside your chest until they feel so heavy you can barely breathe. And it's not just the jokes, it's the projects. It's the things you built. You're looking through your computer the other day, just trying to clean up some files, trying to stay busy. And you open a folder you haven't looked at in a while. It's that multi-page interactive birthday experience you coded for her. You just sit there staring at the screen, looking at the layouts, looking at the timestamps on the files. You remember staying up late, adjusting the code, getting frustrated when a transition didn't work right, and then smiling when it finally did, because you knew exactly how her face would look when she clicked through it. And right next to it in the directory is the digital apology scrapbook you made. You pour hours into making something tailored specifically for one human being on this earth. You build it with their humor, their aesthetics, their inside jokes. You engineer a digital space just for them. And now, it's just dead code. It's just files sitting on a hard drive taking up space. You can't delete them, because deleting them feels like erasing history. But you can't look at them either, because every line of code is just a reminder of a language you use to speak with someone who doesn't want to talk to you anymore. During the day, it's easier to pretend you don't care about the files, you don't care about the lost jokes. The sun is out, there's noise, you go to work, you go to class, you act fine, people ask you how you're holding up, and you give them the standard answer. You say, "I'm just focusing on myself right now," or, "It is what it is," and they nod. They give you a sympathetic look, because they think you are mourning a romance. They think you are sad because you don't have someone to go on dates with. They don't understand that you are suffocating because your safe space has been boarded up, so you fill the daylight hours with noise. You play music too loud in your headphones. You put on 3-hour podcasts while you're doing the dishes. You start talking to people you don't even really want to talk to, just so the air around you isn't empty. You treat the day like a shift you have to clock into. You just have to survive until the sun goes down. But then, it's 2 a.m., your room is completely quiet. The podcasts are off. The distractions are asleep. Your phone buzzes on the nightstand. The screen lights up the dark room, and for half a second, your brain completely betrays you. Your nervous system skips a beat, tricking you into hoping it's her, hoping that maybe she couldn't sleep either. hoping that maybe she missed the friendship too. But you turn the screen over and it's just an automated email. And the craziest part of all of this, the part that genuinely makes you feel like you're losing your grip on reality, the only person on the planet who knows exactly how to comfort you right now is the exact person who caused the pain. When you had a bad day before, you talked to her. When you felt overwhelmed, you talked to her. When you felt this specific crushing weight in your chest, she was the one who knew how to talk you down. She knew exactly how to make the room feel smaller and safer. And now you are grieving the loss of her, and your very first instinct is still to reach out to her for comfort. You want to text her and say, "This is so hard, I feel so alone today." You want to complain to your best friend about how much your heart is broken. But the person who broke it is the only one who can fix it, so you can't. You are entirely, completely alone in a way you haven't been since before she walked into your life. You start remembering the dumbest things. You remember how you used to just exist in the same room. Parallel play. She'd be scrolling on her phone, you'd be messing around with some retro hardware aesthetic project, trying to get a black Nokia phone design to look right on a digital lens. You wouldn't say a word to each other for an hour. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was a full silence. It was the comfort of knowing that if you looked over your shoulder, she was right there, and if you finally got the lens to work, she'd be the first one to see it. You don't realize how loud an empty room is until you lose that specific, shared silence. Now, when you sit in your room working, the quiet is deafening. It physically presses against your ears, because it's no longer the silence of two people comfortably existing. It's just the silence of one person who is completely alone, staring at a monitor, waiting for a notification that is never going to come, so you just lie there, in the dark, staring at the ceiling, holding all these random thoughts that have nowhere to go, holding all this love and grief that has nowhere to land. You realize this isn't just regular loneliness. Regular loneliness is just not having anyone around. This is different. This is the weird, heavy kind of lonely where something happens during the day, and halfway through reaching for your phone, you remember you've been evicted from the only home your thoughts ever had. And that's it. You close your eyes, and it just becomes another sentence that only exists inside your head. Losing someone isn't just an emotional event, it's a physical one. Your logic catches up pretty quickly. You know the relationship is over, you know you aren't going to see them this weekend, but your nervous system has absolutely no idea that you broke up. Your hands still operate in the reality where she's in your life. It happens before you even have time to process it. You wake up, and before you even have time to process it, you wake up, and before your eyes are fully open, your hand reaches to the nightstand. You swipe to your messages. You are halfway through typing a good morning text, and then you stop, you delete the letters, you lock the screen. It's the digital phantom limb. You open Instagram on your lunch break. You see a highly specific joke about a movie you watched together 3 months ago. Your thumb automatically goes to the share button. For the last year, her name was always the first one there. The algorithm had mapped out your entire relationship, so you tap the screen without looking, but she's not there anymore. Her icon got pushed down, replaced by a group chat, replaced by coworkers. The app adjusted to the breakup before your heart did. You just sit there holding your phone, because you almost sent a video to a stranger. It happens when you're working, too. It's 1 a.m., you're sitting at your desk, staring at a local server environment, trying to debug a Firebase authentication route. You've been staring at the same block of code for 2 hours. And then, finally, you figure it out. The server stops throwing errors. The terminal glows green. It works. You spin around in your chair, pull out your phone, and open her contact. She didn't even understand code. It didn't matter. You just wanted to share the tiny victory. You stare at her name. The terminal is green. The laptop fan is humming. You close the laptop, it bleeds into the physical world too. You go to the grocery store on a Thursday afternoon. You're just buying water and eggs. You turn down aisle 4, and you walk past that one specific brand of chips she always made you buy. For a split second, your hand reaches for the bag. Your body is just following the script it memorized. When you pull your hand back, you leave the aisle. It makes you realize how much of your actual brain capacity was dedicated to just knowing her. You knew how she took her coffee. You knew which side of the bed she liked. You knew that when she got quiet in a certain way, she was overstimulated and wanted to leave the room. And now, overnight, you are completely fluent in a language you are never allowed to speak again. What are you supposed to do with all that useless information? It just sits in your head, taking up space, a massive archive of someone else's preferences. When you break up with your best friend, you don't just lose the future, you lose the present tense. You lose the right to know how their day went. For years, you knew the exact rhythm of her schedule. What time she woke up, what she had for breakfast, what she was stressed about at school. Now, you don't even know if she got that haircut she was talking about. Someone who used to be the main character in your daily life has suddenly become a side character that you only hear about through rumors. You catch yourself wondering about the most mundane things. Did she remember to renew her car registration? Who is she complaining to right now about the weather? Your brain is still operating under the assumption that her problems are your problems, so you force new habits. You rearrange your room, you change your morning routine, but the phantom habits wait for you to get tired. You'll go 3 days feeling completely fine, focused, working, laughing with your friends, and then you'll see a car that looks exactly like hers pull out of a parking lot. Your stomach drops. You mentally prepare yourself to see her face. The car turns, it's just some stranger, and you're left standing on the sidewalk, completely derailed by a car that had absolutely nothing to do with you. You keep your hands in your pockets, and you try to remember how to live a life that doesn't involve her. People think you miss the big things. They assume you're sitting around crying over the anniversary dinners, the vacations, the birthdays, the moments you actually took pictures of, but that's not what breaks you. You don't miss the fireworks, you miss the Tuesday nights. You miss the absolute boring, ordinary nothingness of just existing next to someone. You remember this one night. It was raining. Maybe a Wednesday. You didn't have any plans. Neither of you wanted to cook. You ended up in the drive-thru of some fast food place at 11 p.m., both wearing sweatpants, completely exhausted from the day. The radio was playing quietly. The windshield wipers were dragging back and forth. She was explaining some drama about a coworker you had never even met. You didn't know these people. You would never see them in your life. But you listened because she cared about it. You pulled up to the window. You ordered her exact weird modification, no pickles, extra sauce on the side, a specific drink without her even having to tell you, and that was it. You ate in the car. You talked for an hour about absolutely nothing important. You drove home. If someone filmed it, it would be the most boring movie in the world. But right now, sitting in your room staring at the wall, you would give absolutely anything to have that boring Wednesday back. Because when you lose your best friend, you don't just lose the highlight reel. You lose the person who made the mundane parts of life survivable. You lose the person who made running to the pharmacy feel like an inside joke. You lose the person who made folding laundry bearable. There's a very specific type of intimacy in parallel play. It's when you are both in the same room but you aren't actively doing something together. She's on the couch scrolling through her phone. You're at your desk. You have Figma open on your monitor. You are just dragging digital templates around, staring at the grid, trying to get a layout to look right. It's completely silent for 20 minutes. But it's not an empty silence. It's a full one. It's the comfort of knowing that if you look over your shoulder, she's right there. And if you suddenly have a stupid thought about a font or a color grade, you could just say it out loud into the room, and she'll laugh without looking up from her screen. You don't realize how loud an empty room is until you lose that specific silence. Now, when you sit at your desk working, the quiet is deafening. It physically presses against your ears. It's no longer the silence of two people comfortably existing. It's just the silence of one person who is completely alone. You try to recreate it. You leave the TV on in the background, you put on a long podcast, you play ambient rain sounds just to fill the physical space in the room. But it doesn't work. Noise doesn't replace presence. A podcast doesn't look up at you and ask you a random question about your day. The weekends are the hardest. When you're with your best friend, a weekend with absolutely zero plans is a luxury. Waking up late, no alarms. Looking at the ceiling and asking, what do you want to do today? And the answer being, absolutely nothing. Now, a weekend with no plans is a trap. You wake up on a Saturday morning and the whole day is just stretching out in front of you, completely blank. And instead of feeling relaxed, you feel panic. You have to figure out how to fill 16 hours by yourself. You have to figure out how to distract your brain so you don't accidentally start thinking about what you would be doing if she was still here. So you make yourself busy. You clean your room, you go to the gym, you work on a project, you force yourself to go get a coffee you don't even really want, just so you have a reason to leave the house. You become obsessed with productivity, not because you're ambitious, but because if you stop moving, the reality of the empty house catches up to you. Nobody else sees this part of the grief. When you tell people you're struggling, they think you're mourning the romance. They tell you things like, you'll find someone else who treats you better, or there are plenty of fish in the sea. They don't get it. You aren't sitting here crying because you miss holding hands. You are suffocating because you saw a bizarre license plate on your way home, and the only person on the planet who would have found it funny is gone. You can replace a romantic partner, you can go on a dating app, sit across from a stranger at a coffee shop, and eventually build a new romance. But you cannot replicate a shared history. You cannot instantly rebuild the comfort of someone who already knows you, someone who already knows that when you rub the back of your neck, you're stressed, someone who knows your exact fast food order, someone who knows all the complicated lore of your family dynamics so you don't have to explain it from scratch. That takes years, and that's what you're actually crying about. You aren't just crying for the future you lost. You are grieving the thousands of tiny, microscopic, boring details that made up your entire daily life. You try to talk to new people. You try to make new friends. You go out. You sit across from someone new. They ask you a question about yourself, and you freeze. Because how do you explain who you are without mentioning her? She was there for all of it. Every funny story involves her. Every major realization involves her. You start telling a story about a project you were working on. You're talking about wiring up a breadboard, trying to capture sensor data, and how the prototype kept failing. You want to tell them how funny it was when the whole thing short-circuited at 3 a.m. and she made that one specific joke about it. But you stop halfway through. Because to make the story make sense, you have to explain the inside joke. And to explain the inside joke, you have to explain her personality. It takes too much context, so you just cut the story short. You give a generic punchline, and the new person gives a polite laugh. But it doesn't land. It's exhausting, having to translate your own life to strangers. With her, there was no translation. You just existed. The hardest part about mourning the mundane is that you can't escape it. If you were mourning a specific vacation, you could just avoid that city. If you were mourning a specific restaurant, you just don't drive down that street. But how do you avoid a Tuesday morning? How do you avoid doing your laundry? How do you avoid your own car? You can't. Your entire daily routine is a minefield of small, boring tasks that you used to do together. You watch a movie. A new episode of that show you started together comes out. You sit on the couch and hit play. But you aren't really watching it. You are watching it for two people. You see a scene that you know would make her laugh. Your brain automatically generates her exact reaction. You can hear her voice in the empty room. The episode ends. The credits roll, and you just stare at the black screen. What's the point of finishing the story if you can't talk to her about the ending? You look around your room and everything is a loaded gun, a hoodie over the back of the chair, the specific coffee mug on your desk, the playlist you made for late night drives. None of it is neutral anymore. It all has a backstory, and she is the only other person holding the script. People tell you to throw things away. They tell you to put it all in a box and shove it in the closet. Out of sight, out of mind. But how do you box up a routine? How do you throw away the way she used to say your name when you were annoying her? You can't. It just stays with you. A phantom weight you carry around all day. You sit down at your desk, you try to work, you pull up the code for a VST plugin you've been compiling, you stare at the lock-free extraction pipelines on your monitor, trying to force your brain to focus on the logic. But the screen just blurs. You aren't really looking at it, you are just looking through it, because your brain is trying to solve a problem that logic can't fix. How does someone go from knowing every single detail about your Tuesday to not knowing you at all? How do you go from being the first text in the morning to strangers who actively pretend the other person doesn't exist? It doesn't make sense. You drive to get food, you look over to the right, the passenger seat is empty. It's been empty for weeks, but your brain still hasn't updated the software. You hit a sharp bump in the road and you instinctively reach your arm out, just in case. Just in case, but there's no one there to protect. So you just sit there, letting the white noise of the car engine fill the quiet, knowing that tomorrow is Wednesday and it's going to be exactly the same. A dead language is a language that has no native speakers left. It's a vocabulary that only exists in archives. Nobody speaks it in the streets. Nobody uses it to tell a joke. It just sits there, trapped in history, completely useless to the modern world. When she left, your sense of humor became a dead language. You and her, you spent years building a lexicon. You took completely normal things, a mispronounced word, a weird commercial, a random guy you saw on the street, and you assigned them a new meaning. You built an entire dictionary that only the two of you had the key to. And now, you are the only surviving speaker. You'll be sitting in a cafe, just working on your laptop, minding your own business, and someone at the table next to you will say a word. A completely ordinary word. Maybe it's the name of a city, maybe it's just the brand of a jacket they're wearing, but in your dictionary, that word is a punchline, so you smirk. You look up from your screen, your eyes darting to the empty chair across from you, instinctively waiting to make eye contact, waiting for that shared look, the look where you both know exactly what the other person is thinking without either of you having to say a single syllable. But the chair is empty, she's not there. The punchline just hangs in the air, completely invisible. Your smirk fades. You look back down at your screen. You're just sitting alone in a cafe, smiling at an empty chair, looking completely insane. That is the specific isolation of the inside joke. It's the moment you realize that a joke isn't actually funny on its own. It's only funny because it connects you to the person who shares the context. Without her, the context is gone. It happens when you are creating, too. You sit in your room writing lyrics. You have that whole system. One identity for writing the words. One persona for actually getting on the mic and producing the track. A whole artistic boundary built on dividing yourself in two. You spent hours trying to explain that concept to other people, and they just looked at you confused. They asked why you couldn't just use one name, but she got it immediately. She didn't question it. She just understood it. She used to make jokes about which version of you she was talking to right now, the writer or the performer. You look at your notepad, you write a line. It's a good line, the kind of dark trap flow you know she would hype up, the kind of wordplay she would send a voice memo screaming about. You stare at the ink on the page, you put the pen down. What is the point of writing something clever if the only person who actually understands your creative language isn't allowed to hear it? The graveyard of inside jokes isn't just in your head, it's physical. It's in your phone. You open your camera roll. You're scrolling back, trying to find a picture of a receipt or a document you saved a few months ago, and you hit the archive, the screenshots. There are hundreds of them. Pictures of ugly shirts you saw online, screenshots of bizarre texts from your family, blurry photos of a weird dog you walked past. To anyone else scrolling through your phone, this folder looks like absolute garbage. It makes zero sense, but to you, it is a museum. Every single blurry photo is tied to a specific conversation. Every screenshot is a timestamp of a night you spent laughing until your chest hurt. You look at a picture of a random street sign. You remember exactly where you were. You remember the car ride. You remember the way she couldn't breathe because she was laughing so hard at a joke you made about it, and then the memory stops. You are back in your room. The picture is just a picture of a street sign again. You can't send it to anyone else. If you showed it to another friend, they would just stare at it and ask, "What is this?" And you would have to say, "Never mind, you had to be there." That is the heaviest phrase in the English language. You had to be there. Because she was there. She was the only one who was there, and now she isn't. So you close the camera roll. You delete the blurry photo. Because keeping it feels like hoarding artifacts from a civilization that doesn't exist anymore. But deleting it feels like a betrayal. It feels like you are willingly erasing the evidence that the two of you ever happened. So you just sit in this terrible middle ground. You don't look at the photos, but you don't delete them either. You just let them sit there in the dark of your hard drive, waiting for a day when looking at them won't feel like stepping on glass. You try to recycle them, you meet someone new, a friend, a classmate, a coworker, you are talking, and a situation happens that lines up perfectly with an old joke. The setup is flawless. You say the line, you use the exact tone she used to use, you wait for the laugh, the new person just looks at you, they smile politely, they ask, "What does that mean?" and you freeze, because you realize you aren't just making a joke. You're trying to cast a stranger in a role that is already taken. You're trying to make a new person wear an old ghost. You just shake your head. Nothing. Just something I remembered. The joke dies right there on the table. After that, you learn to stop recycling. You start actively stripping your own vocabulary. When you spend enough time with someone, your accents bleed together. You adopt their slang. You start using their phrases. She had a specific way of saying "okay" when she was annoyed. She had a weird word she used for when the room was too loud. For months, those words belonged to you, too. You used them without thinking. Now, every time one of those words slips out of your mouth, it feels like biting your own tongue. You hear her voice in your own throat, so you force yourself to stop. You manually edit the way you speak. You pause before you answer a basic question, just to make sure you use a normal word instead of her word. You are literally rewiring your own brain, erasing her fingerprints from your vocabulary. But the absolute worst part is when the universe writes a sequel to the joke. You are scrolling late at night. You see a video that perfectly references that one stupid, highly specific argument you had in a parking lot a year ago. It's the exact scenario. It's mathematically impossible how perfectly it matches. The universe just handed you the ultimate follow-up joke. A year in the making. You hit the bookmark button. You save it, but you have no one to show it to. The punchline is perfect. The timing is perfect. The timing is perfect. But the audience is gone, so it just sits in your saved folder, right next to the audio mixing tutorials and the Arduino pin diagrams. A perfectly good joke locked in a digital graveyard. It makes you realize what a ghost actually is. It's not something haunting your house. It's a punchline with no one to laugh at it. It's a vocabulary word you aren't allowed to say anymore. It's saving a video to a folder that is never going to be opened. You look at the saved post one last time. You lock your phone. You sit in the quiet of your room. and you just let the joke rest in peace. Grief is tricky. It makes you think the hardest days are going to be the bad ones. You expect to break down when you fail a test, or when you have a terrible day at work, or when your car breaks down on the side of the highway in the rain. You brace yourself for those moments. You know you are going to miss her when things go wrong because she was your safety net. But nobody warns you about the good days. Nobody warns you that the absolute loneliest you will ever feel is when something amazing happens to you, and you realize you have nobody to tell. It happens on a random Thursday. You are sitting at your desk, you refresh the student portal, the grades for that one clinical rotation finally posted, the one you spent weeks stressing over, the one that kept you up until 4 a.m. staring at diagnostic diagrams and reading through endless pages of optometry textbooks until your own vision actually blurred. The page loads. You passed. You didn't just pass, you killed it. The relief washes over you. Your shoulders drop. A genuine smile breaks across your face. You grab your phone. Your thumb moves before your brain even registers what it's doing, and then you stop. The smile completely falls off your face. Because who are you supposed to text? You could text your parents. They would be proud. They would say, "Good job," and tell you they always believed in you. You could text a group chat. Your friends would send a fire emoji. They'd say, "Let's celebrate this weekend." But none of them actually know what that grade means. They weren't on the phone with you at 3 a.m. when you were having a panic attack about failing. They didn't hear your voice cracking because you were so exhausted. They didn't have to talk you out of quitting. She did. She was the one who held the context. She was the one who knew exactly how much blood and anxiety went into that one single letter grade on a screen. So a congrats bro from a friend feels completely empty. It's like winning a marathon, but the only people cheering at the finish line are people who didn't even know you were running. You lock your phone. You sit alone in your room with your perfect grade, and you have never felt more like a failure. The same thing happens with your projects. You spend weeks building out an online storefront. You design the digital templates in Figma. You spend 3 agonizing days fighting with CAIM records and DNS settings, trying to get your custom domain to link up properly. You finally get the payment gateway integrated, it goes live. You are sitting on the couch a few days later, and your phone buzzes. It's a notification. Somebody bought one. A complete stranger on the internet actually paid for your design. The gateway went through. It is a massive, tangible win. A validation of all those quiet hours you spent engineering the layout. You stare at the notification. Your chest tightens. Because the only person who knew you were building it isn't here. The only person who watched you mock up the early ugly versions of those templates isn't allowed to see the final product. Success without a witness is a very specific type of grief. It takes the joy right out of your hands and replaces it with this hollow, echoing silence. You realize that good news isn't actually good on its own. A win is just an event. It's just a data point. What makes it good is the reflection of it in someone else's eyes. What makes it good is hearing that specific pitch in her voice when she gets excited for you. What makes it good is the feeling of someone being proud of you. Without her, it's just a notification on the screen, so you swipe it away, you don't tell anyone, you don't post about it, you don't screenshot it for the group chat. You just swallow the victory the exact same way you swallow the inside jokes. And you start to dread the good things happening. Because every time you get a win, every time you move forward, it just highlights the fact that she isn't standing next to you anymore. Every step forward is a step further away from the timeline where she existed. You start realizing that healing isn't just about learning how to be sad alone. It's about learning how to be happy alone. And somehow, that is so much harder. You tell yourself it will get easier. You tell yourself that eventually you'll get used to holding your own victories, that the sting will fade, but the milestones keep coming, and they keep feeling like ambushes. It's a Tuesday night. You are just checking your inbox, mindlessly clearing out spam, and there's an email sitting there, an acceptance letter. It's for a capacity building workshop, a space science program you applied for months ago, back when things were still okay, back when you were filling out the academic forms and complaining to her about how long the application was taking. You got in. You read the lines on the screen. Congratulations. We are pleased to inform you. You lean back in your chair. It squeaks in the quiet room. You should be ecstatic. This is a big deal. This is a massive step forward. But your first thought isn't about the program. It isn't about your career. Your first thought is, she's never gonna know. She's never gonna know you got in. She's never gonna ask you how the first day went. You look at the glowing monitor, and a terrifying realization drops into your stomach. This isn't just about one email. This is about the rest of your life. Every graduation, every major job offer, every time you move to a new city, or finish a massive project, or finally achieve that thing you stayed up until 4 a.m. talking to her about, She isn't going to be there for any of it. You are going to live an entire, full, successful life, and she's going to be completely absent for the absolute best parts of it. The person who saw you struggling through the worst of it doesn't get to see you make it to the top of the hill. You close the email, you just stare at the desktop background, you realize that if you are going to survive this, you have to learn how to be your own audience. You have to learn how to clap for yourself in an empty room. It feels pathetic at first. You go out to get dinner by yourself to celebrate. You buy yourself a coffee, sit in your parked car, and silently acknowledge that you did a good job. You try to mimic the warmth of someone else being proud of you, but the temperature is always a little too cold. But what is the alternative? Letting the good things slip by just because she isn't here to witness them? Punishing your present because your past isn't here to validate it? You put your car in drive, you let the silence sit in the passenger seat, you take a breath, and you tell yourself out loud to the empty dashboard, I did good. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't fill the passenger seat, but it's enough. It has to be enough. There is a version of you that belongs to the public. It's the version that walks out the front door every morning, the version that sits in class, the version that replies to emails. It is a highly engineered, perfectly calibrated persona. You are the strong friend, you are the reliable one, you are the guy who knows how to fix things, who knows how to listen, who knows how to hold everything together. You're sitting in a lab, you're wiring up an 8823 sensor to an Arduino, testing an E-gate prototype. Your friends are leaning over the desk asking you how to configure the pins. They're watching the live waveforms of a heartbeat on the cereal platter, asking you how it works. You explain it to them. You help them fix their code, you troubleshoot their problems, you are the one they come to when things break, and you play that role perfectly. You smile at the right times, you give solid advice, you act like a finished product, but it is exhausting. Maintaining that level of competence, that level of stability, requires so much energy. You have to constantly filter your own thoughts. You have to make sure you aren't complaining too much. You have to make sure you aren't being a burden. With the rest of the world, you are always performing. But with her, you didn't have to. She was the only person on the planet you didn't have to be impressive for. You could just be tired. You could call her at midnight, completely burned out, completely frustrated, and you didn't have to filter a single word. You could be messy. You could be annoying. You could be a rough draft. She didn't need you to be the reliable guy. She didn't care about the prototypes or the grades. She just cared about you. She was the dressing room. The one place off stage where you could finally take the heavy costume off and just breathe. And now, the dressing room is locked, so the costume never comes off. You wake up in the morning, you stare at the ceiling, you feel the absolute, crushing weight of the grief sitting in your chest. And then, you look at the clock. You have to be out the door in 20 minutes, so you literally have to compartmentalize your own heartbreak. You look at your grief and you say, wait here, I have to go to work. You get out of bed, you take a shower, you put on the mask, you walk into the world, and you lie to everyone you see. How are you doing? They ask. I'm good, you say, just tired, been working a lot. It is the easiest lie in the world. People accept it immediately because they want to accept it. They don't actually want to know that you spent the last 3 hours of the night staring at a wall. They don't want to know that you had a panic attack in the grocery store because you saw a specific brand of chips. They just want the strong friend. So you give them the strong friend, you laugh at their jokes, you ask them about their weekend. You sit in a crowded room completely surrounded by people, and you have never felt more isolated. Because the isolation doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being completely misunderstood. It comes from the fact that you are bleeding out right in front of them, and your fake smile is so convincing that they are actually congratulating you on how well you're doing. You're handling this so well, they say. You just nod. If they only knew. If they could see you at 3 a.m. when the performance ends. But they can't. Nobody can. The only person who ever saw what was underneath the mask is gone. And without her, you start to feel like the mask is permanently glued to your face. You start to wonder if there is even a real version of you left underneath it, or if you're just going to be this perfectly fine, completely hollow character for the rest of your life. You walk back to your car at the end of the day. You close the door. You don't start the engine. You don't turn on the radio. You just drop your head against the steering wheel. You are so tired, not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, the kind of tired that comes from holding your breath for 14 hours a day. You take a breath, you lift your head off the steering wheel, you walk inside, and you prepare to do it all again tomorrow. The next day, you are standing in front of a room. You are giving a pitch presentation. You have the slides projected on the wall. You are explaining the structural outline for an A-powered educational lab. You are pointing to the screen, walking them through the mechanics of a 3D skeletal overlay system for video positioning analysis. You're speaking clearly, your tone is professional, your hands aren't shaking, people in the room are nodding, they are taking notes, they are looking at you and seeing someone who has it all figured out, someone who is ambitious, driven, and completely focused on the future. But you are operating on pure autopilot. The words are coming out of your mouth, but you are not actually in the room. You are hovering somewhere above your own body, watching yourself perform. There is a profound guilt that comes with living a double life. You start to feel like a liar. You sit in a booth at a restaurant with your friends later that night. It's loud. Someone tells a story, everyone laughs. You laugh too. You smile at the exact right moment. You take a sip of your drink. But as you sit there, surrounded by noise, you know the truth. You know that in exactly 3 hours, you will be sitting in the dark of your room, completely paralyzed by a memory from a year ago. You look around the table, and you wonder which version of you is actually the real one. Is it the guy giving the pitch presentation? The guy laughing in the booth? Or is it the guy who stares at the ceiling at 3 a.m. because he doesn't know how to exist without his best friend? You don't know the answer anymore. The boundary between the mask and your actual face has completely dissolved. You go home, you lock the door, you let the mask drop. The relief is immediate, but it's followed by the heavy, familiar weight of the quiet room. You survive the night, you stare at the wall, you scroll through your phone, you wait for the hours to pass, and then you see it. The sky outside your window starts to turn blue. It's 5 a.m. Most people see the sunrise and feel hope. They see a new day, a fresh start. But when you are grieving, the sunrise is terrifying. You watch the light creep across the floor of your bedroom, and instead of feeling relieved that the night is over, you feel a crushing sense of dread in your chest. Because the sun coming up means the world is waking up. And the world waking up means you have to put the mask back on, you have to go back out there, you have to reply to texts, you have to go to class, you have to be the strong friend again. The exhaustion hits you before you even get out of bed. You aren't tired from lack of sleep. You are tired from the anticipation of the performance. You walk into the bathroom, you turn on the sink, the water runs cold over your hands, you look up at the mirror, you look at your own eyes, you look at the bags under them, you look at the exhaustion written into your jawline, you take a deep breath, and you practice the smile, just a slight curve of the lips, just enough to convince the cashier, your classmates, your parents, your friends. You hold the smile for a second, checking your reflection to make sure it looks natural, to make sure none of the grief is leaking through the cracks. It looks fine, you turn off the sink, you grab your keys, and you walk out the door to go lie to the world for another 14 hours. The weirdest part about time passing isn't the distance, it's the data. When you are with someone every single day, you are constantly syncing up. Your lives are essentially running on a shared cloud. If something happens to you at 2 p.m., she knows about it by 2005. She knows what you ate for lunch. She knows that your car is making a weird noise. She knows you are annoyed because your sleep schedule is completely wrecked. Your timelines are perfectly parallel, but then the breakup happens, and the sync completely stops. At first, it doesn't feel that different. A week goes by, she still basically knows what your life looks like. She knows where you live, she knows your schedule, she knows what you're probably doing on a Friday night. But then a month goes by, then 3 months, and suddenly the invisible gap between you two starts to fill up with all these tiny unread life updates. You change your routine, you start waking up a little earlier. You stop going to that one coffee shop because they changed their hours, so you find a new one on the other side of town. You buy a new jacket. These are incredibly small, boring details. They don't matter to anyone, but they matter to you, because you realize standing in the mirror one morning that the mental image she has of you is now entirely outdated. She doesn't know about the new coffee shop, she doesn't know about the jacket, she doesn't know that you finally fixed that weird noise your car was making. If she pictures you in her head right now, she is picturing a version of you from 3 months ago. A version of you that doesn't actually exist anymore. And that thought is terrifying, because it means you are actively becoming a stranger to your best friend. It happens with your thoughts too. You're constantly evolving. You read a book, or you watch a documentary, or you have a long conversation with someone that actually shifts your perspective on something. Your opinions change. Your goals pivot. You have this massive realization about your life, and the first thing you want to do is tell her how your brain is shifting. You want to update the software, but the server is disconnected. So your internal world just keeps changing, and she is completely locked out of the update. It makes you feel like an imposter in your own life. You look at old photos of the two of you, and you realize you aren't even the same person in that picture anymore. The guy in that photo didn't know how quiet the room was going to get. The guy in that photo hadn't spent the last 90 days learning how to swallow his own words. You are growing up without her, and it feels like a betrayal. It feels like moving on is an insult to the memory of the friendship. You almost want to freeze yourself in time. You want to keep everything exactly the way it was when she left, just in case she ever comes back. You want her to be able to walk right back into your life and recognize the place. But time doesn't let you do that. The calendar just keeps dragging you forward, kicking and screaming, into a future she isn't a part of. The other day, a mutual friend brought her up. We were just sitting in a car, and they casually mentioned that she got a new job. The words just hung in the air. She got a new job. Your stomach completely dropped. You just stared out the window. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't anger. It was the absolute crushing realization that something major happened in her life, and you found out about it through a rumor. For years, you were the first phone call. You were the one she practiced the interview with. You were the one who proofread the resume. And now, you are just a guy sitting in a passenger seat, finding out about her life from a third party 3 weeks after it happened. You are just part of the general public now. You just nod. You say, "Oh, that's cool. Good for her." You keep your voice flat. You act like it's just casual trivia. But inside, you are grieving the complete collapse of your shared world. You go home that night and you realize the scariest part of the unread life updates. It's not just that she doesn't know who you are anymore. It's that you have absolutely no idea who she is either. You know exactly how to turn a stranger into a friend. You ask questions. You spend time together. You build the data. You learn their habits, their fears, their sense of humor. It's an additive process, but nobody teaches you how to watch a friend turn back into a stranger. It's a terrifying thing to witness. It's like watching a house you built slowly burn to the ground, and you are just standing on the lawn with your hands in your pockets, completely unable to stop it. Every day that passes, the distance gets wider. She is out there in the world, accumulating new experiences. She is listening to new music. She is developing new inside jokes with new people. She is having late-night conversations with someone else, building a completely new shared language that you will never get to hear, and you have to just accept it. You are scrolling on your phone on a Sunday afternoon, and you see a photo. Maybe a mutual friend posted it. Maybe it just appeared on your feed. You stop scrolling. You look at the screen. She is in the background of the picture. She is laughing at something someone just said, but she's wearing a shirt you've never seen before. Her hair is styled a little differently. She is standing in a room you've never been in, surrounded by people you don't recognize. You stare at the photo. You zoom in on her face. It's the exact same smile you used to see every single day. You know the exact sound she makes when she smiles like that. You know exactly how her eyes crinkle at the corners. But the context is entirely alien. You are looking at a parallel universe. You are looking at a life that is functioning perfectly fine without you in it. The formula of her daily routine has been recalculated, and you are no longer one of the variables. The math works without you. That is a very specific, sharp kind of pain. You lock your phone. You set it face down on the desk. It forces you to confront the finality of the split. You open your messages, you scroll all the way down to the bottom of her contact thread, you look at the very last text she ever sent you. It's not a grand goodbye, it's not a movie script ending, it's probably something incredibly mundane. Okay, see you tomorrow. Or maybe just a reaction to a link you sent. A simple LOAL. When she typed those letters, neither of you knew that it was going to be the last thing she ever said to you. It wasn't meant to be the final word, but the timeline just snapped. And now that stupid, meaningless text is the period at the end of the longest sentence of your life. You read the timestamp. It's been months. Months of complete silence. You look at the gray bubble on the screen, and you finally understand the reality of the unread life updates. The person you miss isn't just gone from your life. That exact version of her is gone from the world entirely. Because the version of her that existed with you, the version of her that made those specific jokes and understood that specific silence, that version only existed because of you. You brought that out of each other. She is a different person now, and you are a different person now. If you were to somehow sit across from each other at a coffee shop tomorrow, it wouldn't be a reunion. It would be a first date between two strangers who just happen to share a graveyard of memories. You would have to ask her how her job is going. You would have to ask her what she's been up to. You would have to make small talk with the person who used to know your soul, and that would be worse than the silence. So you leave the text thread, you close the app, you stop checking the mutual friends' pages, you stop looking for the updates. You realize that the only way to protect the memory of your best friend is to let her become a stranger. You have to let the ghost rest. You turn off your phone, you look out the window. The world is still spinning, the cars are still driving by, and you just let her go. You think you can outwork the quiet. You think that if you just stay busy enough, if you fill every single hour of the day with a project, you can outrun the memory of her. You decide to weaponize your own distraction. So you build a wall out of the work, you dive into the art, you sit down in your room with the notepad, you split yourself in two, the way you always do. It's a survival mechanism. A way to manage the weight. There is Harnor, the writer, the one who sits in the total silence, structuring the lyrics, pulling the dark thoughts out of your chest and putting them on paper. And then there is Yod, the performer, the one who steps up to the mic, produces the beat, and actually makes the track hit. You keep them separate. It's cleaner that way. It protects you. But she was the only person on Earth who ever saw the bridge between them. The rest of the world only gets to see the final export. They hear the finished product, they hear the polish. But she used to sit on the floor of your room while you were in the messy middle. She watched Harnor write the words, and she watched Yod record them. She didn't care about the branding or the personas. She was the only one who just saw you, the complete, unbroken version of you. Now, you are just working in a vacuum. You open your digital audio workstation. You're working on a new mashup. You are completely obsessing over the structural arrangement. You are meticulously alternating complete stanzas from different tracks. You refuse to mix them line by line. Mixing them line by line ruins the tension. It gets too muddy. It has to be complete thoughts. One full stanza of one song, trading punches with a full stanza of another. You spend 3 hours perfectly aligning the vocals. You layer the dark trap snares. You get lost in the grid. For 3 hours, your brain is entirely occupied by waveforms and frequencies. You don't think about her once. The distraction is working. You hit export. The progress bar fills up. The file saves to your desktop. You take off your headphones, and the silence of the room crashes right back down on your shoulders. Heavier than before, because the art doesn't actually save you. It just delays the bill. And worse than that, you start to realize that the art is infected by her. You listen back to the exported track, you hear the alternating stanzas, the heavy shifting blocks of sound, and you realize you aren't just arranging music anymore. You're unconsciously mapping out your own grief. That's what the grief feels like. It doesn't mix perfectly into your day line by line. It hits you in complete stanzas. You get one full day where you feel completely fine. You're focused, you are working, you are moving forward, and then, without warning, the track switches. And you get a full day of absolute paralyzing sadness. Trading punches, back and forth. You close the audio software, you look at the notepad on your desk. You try to tell yourself that the heartbreak is at least good for the write. People always say that pain makes great art. They say you can channel it, but that's a lie. Pain doesn't make the art better. It just makes the art lonely. What's the point of writing a devastating, perfect lyric if the person who inspired it is never going to read it? What's the point of creating a flawless transition between two beats if the only person who used to nod her head to your rough drafts isn't sitting on the floor of your room anymore? You realize that every single thing you create now is just an elaborate monument to a ghost. You're building digital architecture songs, templates, code, and leaving the front door wide open, hoping that somehow she wanders in, but she doesn't. The file just sits on your desktop. Another unshared victory, another dead language. You lean back in your chair, you stare at the ceiling. You can split yourself into as many personas as you want. You can be the writer, you can be the singer, you can be the student, you can be the strong friend, but none of them know how to stop missing her. You don't just see the ghosts in the audio files. You see them in the code, you see them in the physical hardware sitting on your desk. You open Lens Studio. You pull up the project file for that retro filter you were building. The black Nokia phone design. You spend an hour adjusting the pixelation effect, mapping the head tracking controls so the screen moves perfectly with the user's face. It's technical, it's precise, it requires all of your attention. But the entire time you are adjusting the tracking nodes, you are just thinking about the test links. You used to send her the active snap codes before they went public. She was your entire quality assurance department. You would shoot her the link, and 2 minutes later she would send back a video of herself wearing the lens, doing something completely ridiculous, making fun of the glitchy prototype. Now, you generate the test link, you copy it to your clipboard, and you just stare at it. There is nobody to send it to. You just test it on your own face in the dark monitor. A digital reflection of someone who looks completely exhausted, wearing a mask he built for strangers. You close the application. You try to move to hardware, physical things you can actually touch with your hands. You pull out the breadboards. You wire up an SPY32 camera module. You focus entirely on the pin connections, the grounding wires, the power supply. You snap the jumper wires into place. You try to convince yourself that if you can just build something complex enough, If you can just establish a stable physical connection between two components on a desk, your brain will stop trying to ping a human server that doesn't exist anymore. You design vital monitoring systems. You track heartbeats on a serial plotter. You write scripts to catch errors in back-end environments. You spend your entire day studying how to fix broken systems, but you can't engineer a fix for an empty passenger seat. You can't write a script to bypass the muscle memory of reaching for your phone at a red light. Grief is a hardware failure that no amount of code can patch, and that is the most frustrating part of the aftermath. For someone who likes to build things, you are used to having control. You're used to finding the bug and fixing it, but there is no bug here. The system is working exactly as intended. You loved someone, they left, and now you have to carry the weight of that absence. That is the feature, not a glitch. You stare at the breadboard, the little LED light is glowing red, the circuit is complete, the power is running, but the room is still completely dead. You unplug the board, the light fades out, you close the laptop, the fans spin down, the quiet rushes back into the space, filling the corners of the room, pressing against your ears. You built all these things to prove to yourself that you don't need her, to prove that you can still create, still function, still move forward without your best friend watching. But the only thing you actually proved is that a finished project is just another unshared victory. The art doesn't replace the person, it just builds a monument to the space they used to occupy. So you leave the hardware on the desk. You leave the audio files on the hard drive, you turn off the lamp, and you go to sleep knowing that tomorrow you are going to wake up and try to outwork the ghost all over again. There is a specific kind of panic that comes when the healing actually starts. Everyone tells you that time heals all wounds. They say it like it's a comfort. They promise you that one day you will wake up and it won't hurt as much. What they don't tell you is how terrifying that actually is, because the pain is the very last connection you have to her. For months, the grief has been a physical presence in the room. It's heavy, it's exhausting, and it makes it hard to breathe. But at least it is something. At least it proves that she was real. The depth of the pain is the only remaining evidence of the depth of the friendship. And then, one day, the system starts to override itself. You wake up on a Tuesday, you get out of bed, you make your coffee, you go to your classes, you come home, you work on a project, and as you are turning off the lamp at midnight, it hits you. You didn't think about her today, not even once. You went a full 16 hours without your chest tightening. You didn't look at the empty passenger seat in your car. You didn't check to see if she watched your story. For the first time in a year, you just lived a normal, boring day. You should feel relieved. This is what you've been fighting for. This is what survival looks like. Instead, you feel an absolute crushing wave of guilt. It feels like a second betrayal. It feels like you are voluntarily letting go of the rope. If you stop being sad, if you stop missing her, then what is left of the relationship? If the pain is the only thing keeping her ghost in the room, then healing means you are finally kicking her out of the house. So you panic. You actively try to make yourself sad again. You go into your phone, you open the hidden folders, you pull up a video of her from a year ago, you hit play, and the second the video starts, a completely different kind of terror sets in, because you realize you didn't just forget to be sad today. You are actually starting to forget her. You listen to the audio on the video, and you realize that her voice sounds different than the version you've been playing in your head. The human brain is a terrible hard drive. It degrades files to save space. You know how audio processing works. You've built the native plugins. You know how lock-free pipelines extract MIDI data, how frequencies get compressed, how audio loses its fidelity when it gets bounced too many times. That is exactly what your brain is doing to her memory. Every time you pull up the memory of her laugh, your brain compresses the file just a little bit more. It loses a frequency. It loses a specific pitch, until eventually you aren't actually remembering her laugh anymore. You are just remembering the memory of her laugh, an approximation, a compressed, low-quality MP3 of someone you used to know perfectly. You sit on the edge of your bed, playing the video on a loop, trying to memorize the exact cadence of her voice, trying to commit the exact shade of her eyes to a secure server in your brain that won't get overwritten. But you can feel the data slipping. You realize you can no longer remember what it actually felt like to sit next to her on the couch. You can remember the visual of it, but the physical warmth, the actual sensation of her presence in the room, it's gone. The timeline is moving forward, and it is aggressively leaving her behind. You start testing yourself. What was her exact coffee order? You hesitate. It takes you 5 seconds to remember. It used to be automatic. What was the name of that one coworker she hated? You draw a blank. The name is completely gone. You drop your phone on the bed. You put your hands over your face. You are losing the data. All those useless, mundane details that you spent years accumulating, the things you thought you were going to hold on to forever, are slowly being deleted by your own mind to make room for new people, new routines, new classes, new projects. You are healing. Your brain is doing exactly what it was engineered to do to keep you alive. But it feels like a tragedy, because forgetting the pain means forgetting the person, and you aren't ready to let the ghost die. So you try to archive her. If your brain is going to delete the files, you decide to store them manually. You spend an entire night digging through your digital footprint. You scroll back through years of messages. You take screenshots of the specific conversations that define who she was, the inside jokes, the late-night panic attacks, the time she said something so perfectly insightful that it actually changed the way you looked at the world. You take hundreds of screenshots. You move them into a secure folder. You back them up to an external hard drive. You tell yourself that as long as the data exists somewhere on a physical disk, you haven't actually lost her. But you know how servers work. You know that a database is only useful if it's constantly being queried, updated, and interacted with. A static database isn't a life. It's a museum. You open one of the screenshots, you read the words on the screen, "You're going to be fine, I promise, just go to sleep." It's her exact phrasing. It's the exact text she sent you when you were completely spinning out over an exam. But as you read it, you realize the terrifying truth about data. Text doesn't have a heartbeat. A screenshot cannot replicate the timing. It can't capture the way you felt when the notification popped up on your screen at 3 a.m. and completely saved your night. It is just black and white pixels on a glowing monitor. You can save every single text she ever sent. You can archive every single photo. You can back up the entire history of your friendship onto a physical drive and put it in a fireproof safe. But you cannot archive a feeling, the physical sensation of being known by someone. The safety of it is completely unrecordable. It only exists in real time, and your real time is empty. So you sit there looking at the folder full of screenshots, and you realize that keeping them is just a different way of torturing yourself. Because looking at the raw data only highlights how completely dead the connection is. It's like staring at the schematic of an engine that has no fuel. You can see how it's supposed to work, but it's never going to turn over again. You close the folder, you disconnect the hard drive, you put it in a drawer, and that is the moment the grief shifts. It stops being an active fight. You stop trying to keep the ghost alive. You stop trying to force the universe to give you back your Tuesday nights. You finally admit defeat. You let the panic wash over you, and then you just let it drain out. You accept the fact that your brain is going to compress the files. You accept that next year, you might not remember the exact sound of her laugh. You accept that 10 years from now, she will just be a quiet, blurry chapter in a very long book. The transition from active grief to passive grief is completely silent. It doesn't happen with a massive breakdown. It happens on a random Thursday afternoon. You are driving your car, the radio is playing, you pass a place where the two of you used to eat, and instead of your stomach dropping, instead of feeling that sharp electric shock of panic, you just feel a dull ache. A quiet, distant sadness, like an old injury that only hurts when it rains. You don't reach for your phone. You don't imagine her in the passenger seat. You just keep driving. You look in the rearview mirror. The restaurant gets smaller and smaller until it disappears around a corner. And for the first time since she left, the silence in the car doesn't feel like a punishment. It just feels like an empty car. You are finally forgetting, and it doesn't kill you. Survival is completely anticlimactic. You spend months thinking the grief is going to take you out. You treat every single day like an emergency. You brace yourself for the mornings. You white-knuckle your way through the late nights. You build a fortress of distractions just to keep the ghost out of your room. And then one day, the war is just over. The smoke clears. You don't get a medal. The credits don't roll. There is no grand cinematic moment where you stand on a mountain and realize you are finally healed. You just wake up on a Wednesday, look at the ceiling, and realize the heavy thing in your chest is gone. It doesn't hurt to breathe anymore, but nobody warns you about the absolute silence that comes after the war. You spend so much energy just trying to keep your head above water. Your entire nervous system was running on adrenaline and panic. Now, you are finally standing on dry land, and you look around and you have absolutely no idea what to do with your hands. You have to figure out who you are without the tragedy. For the last year, the grief was your central operating system. It dictated how you slept, it dictated how you worked, it dictated the music you made and the art you built. The guy missing his best friend became your entire internal identity. Now, that identity is expiring. You sit at a coffee shop, you have your laptop open, you are working on a completely new project, You are writing code, you are designing a layout. And for the first time in a year, you aren't doing it as a distraction, you aren't trying to outwork the quiet, you are just working because you want to build something. You look up from your screen, you look at the empty chair across from you, and it's just a chair. It's not a memorial, it's not a loaded gun, it's just a piece of wooden furniture. You take a sip of your coffee, you go back to your screen. That is the exact moment you realize the permanent shift has happened. You didn't just survive the loss of her, you survived the loss of your own innocence. Before she left, you loved with a blindfold on. You thought that when you found someone who understood your exact frequency, the concrete was poured, the foundation was set. You didn't know that people could just expire. You didn't know that a human being could know every single corner of your mind on a Tuesday and walk past you like an absolute stranger on a Friday. Now you know, and you can never unknow it. The data is permanently written to your hard drive. You start moving forward. You start meeting new people. The world opens back up. You sit in a car with someone new. They make a joke. It's genuinely funny. You laugh. The air in the car is light. It feels good. It feels like you are finally rejoining the human race. But in the very back of your mind, a tiny script is running in the background, a quiet, invisible line of code. It watches a new person laugh. It watches them look at you with warmth and familiarity. And the script just whispers, this is temporary. You look at the new friend, and you don't just see a friend anymore. You see a future stranger, you see a future ghost. You suddenly understand the mechanics of how this person could eventually leave you. You know exactly how the text will slow down. You know exactly how the inside jokes will become dead languages. You know the exact path they will take to walk out of your life. The scar tissue is fully formed. You are no longer afraid of being alone. You survived the worst loneliness imaginable, so the threat of an empty room doesn't terrify you anymore. But you are terrified of the investment. Why would you spend another 2 years building a shared language with someone when you know exactly how fast it can be deleted? Why would you teach someone the complicated lore of your life when you know that one day it will just be useless data sitting in their head? So you sit in the car, you smile at the new friend, but you keep one foot near the door. You hold a tiny piece of yourself back. You don't give them everything. You keep a backup drive of your own soul hidden away just in case the system crashes again. You are healed. But you are fundamentally, permanently changed. The scar tissue protects you, but it also makes you heavy. You realize the part of survival is just learning how to carry the weight of all the ghosts you've collected. You accept that you are going to walk through the rest of your life as a slightly more guarded, slightly more tired version of the person you used to be. And you make peace with that. You look at your life now, the physical reality of the room around you, the projects, the music, the textbooks, the hardware sitting on your desk. You pull up your digital audio workstation. You look at the track files you made over the last year. You look at the backend servers you deployed, the Figma templates you designed, the EG sensors you wired up. For months you looked at all these things and saw failure. You saw them as dead code, unshared victories. You thought they were just monuments to her absence. But as you sit there, completely clear-headed, you finally see them for what they actually are. They are monuments to your own survival. She didn't compile the code, you did. She didn't pass the clinical rotations, you did. She didn't sit in the dark and write those lyrics, you did. You built an entire life out of the wreckage. You engineered a way forward when the absolute center of your universe collapsed. And as you look at the things you built, you realize something incredibly quiet and incredibly profound. People don't just leave a void when they walk away, they leave a blueprint. You look closely at your own habits, the way you structure a sentence when you write, the specific dark aesthetic you lean toward when you open a blank canvas, the way you instinctively listen for a very specific frequency in a snare drum, the way you process a joke. Some of those preferences weren't originally yours. You adopted them from her. You spent so much time parallel playing, so much time syncing up your lives, that you essentially merged her code into your main branch. She changed your vocabulary. She changed your taste. She changed the way you look at a problem. And even though the server is permanently disconnected, that code is still running locally. You're never going to forget her, because she is in the source code of who you are today. You don't have to panic about losing the files. You don't have to hoard screenshots or back up the hard drives. You literally cannot erase her without erasing a fundamental part of yourself. She is permanently baked into the architecture of your life, and that is the final acceptance. You realize that you don't have to forgive her for leaving, and you don't have to forgive yourself for moving on. You just have to let it be what it was. A really beautiful, really tragic chapter that had a hard stop. You stop fighting the current, you stop checking the rearview mirror, you stop expecting the unread life updates to somehow deliver themselves. You sit in your room on a random Friday night, It's late, the house is quiet, you have a completely empty weekend ahead of you. 6 months ago, a blank Saturday would have sent you into a complete spiral. You would have panicked. You would have forced yourself to leave the house just to escape the deafening silence of the walls. But tonight, you just lean back in your chair. You don't feel the need to fill the room with noise. You don't put on a 3-hour podcast. You don't blast ambient rain sounds to trick your brain into feeling accompanied. You just let the quiet be quiet. You look out the window. The street lights are glowing. A car drives by in the distance, the sound of its tires fading out till the street is totally still again. You don't reach for your phone. You don't check your archive. You don't imagine her sitting on the bed behind you. You are entirely, completely alone. And for the first time in a very long time, you are okay. The universe didn't end. The timeline didn't collapse. You just kept breathing, and eventually, the air cleared. You turn off the monitor. You push your chair back. You turn off the lamp, the room goes dark, and you finally go to sleep.